Equally divided.
Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I rise today to talk about the Genius Act and the urgent need to strengthen this bill before the Senate votes on it later this week. The Genius Act would create a framework for bringing stablecoins deeper into the U.S. financial system. And for those who are unfamiliar with stablecoins, they're a type of cryptocurrency whose value is pegged to the value of another asset, like the U.S. dollar. A stablecoin is similar to a bank deposit, only without the guarantees of a bank behind it. A stablecoin is supposed to maintain a stable value, so a holder can redeem it to get their cash back on demand, and they can make payments with it, at least in theory. Now, Democrats want to work with Republicans to advance a stablecoin bill that will make stablecoins safer to use and curb the worst abuses of the industry. There are 5 areas that need revision. First, a bill must include basic rules so government officials can't use stablecoin ventures to line their own pockets, and so that foreign governments and giant corporations cannot use stablecoins to pay bribes to the President of the United States. Second, the bill must prevent big tech and other commercial firms from issuing stablecoins, thereby preserving America's historical separation between banking and commerce. Third, the bill must include basic consumer protections, the same as for any other financial transaction. Fourth, the bill must safeguard national security, providing the same guardrails as other payment systems to make sure that we are not turbocharging the financing of drug traffickers, terrorists, adversaries like North Korea, and crypto scammers.
Your bank makes fat profits on your money, according to this post here. Your stablecoin just sits there until inflation and depegs eat them alive. Meanwhile, whales and funds quietly farm yields on the side. Why should they have all the fun?
Why is Solana attractive for stablecoins? Well, Solana, everyone typically thinks about Solana as being very performant. Said more simply, fast and cheap. I've heard that more than once. But that's really important for financial transactions, because if you're going to be transacting, you actually want to spend your resources on the assets, sort of preserving the value of those assets. You don't want to be spending a lot of time and money just getting the assets to where you want them to be. Right? So if you actually want to be able to operate a payments network, well, that payment network in terms of performance, both cost and time to transact, has got to be more or less similar to how we experience Venmo, to how we use all the various fintech apps in the world. And that's where performance is not just a metric, but performance then becomes an actual user experience. And that's why a lot of folks come to Solana.
And fifth, the bill must have sufficient safeguards so that a stablecoin meltdown won't trigger an economy-wide financial meltdown. With adequate changes in those 5 areas, Democrats could support the Genius Act. When the Genius Act was before the Banking Committee in March, Senate Democrats worked hard to improve the bill. Together, Democrats introduced nearly 70 amendments. We call for votes on more than 24 of them. Every single Democrat voted for every single amendment, and every single Republican voted no. When the bill advanced out of the committee, Democrats made clear they needed to see real changes in the bill before they could vote for it down here on the floor of the Senate. The version that will be voted on by the full Senate as early as this Thursday makes only minor changes, leaving fundamental problems with the bill. I know that the Republican majority intends to force this vote with no real changes. That would be a mistake. If the majority wants to establish a durable legal framework for digital assets, rather than just try to score political points, they will take these concerns seriously and agree to improve the bill. Since the committee vote, President Trump's aggressive efforts to profit from stablecoins and the obvious opportunities for bribery and other influence peddling have demonstrated why it is vital that we make meaningful, substantive reforms to the bill.
BlackRock and JP Morgan stablecoins could top $2 trillion by 2028, and they may end up replacing China as America's biggest creditor. Here's what's happening. Karen says Senate Democrats stall U.S. stablecoin bill. 9 Senate Democrats have withdrawn support for the Genius Act, a bipartisan bill aimed at regulating stablecoins in the U.S. They cited significant issues, particularly concerning national security, AML measures, and financial accountability. Among them were 4 senators who initially approved the bill in the Senate Banking Committee. Republican Senator Bill Hagerty urged bipartisan cooperation, stressing that Republican votes alone aren't sufficient. The bill proposes strict reserve requirements, disclosure rules, and annual audits. Additionally, concerns over former President Trump's crypto business have heightened political tensions around this legislation. Chris Dixon says it's time to pass bipartisan stablecoin legislation. The Genius Act will protect consumers and increase transparency, a significant improvement on the status quo, which I thought was what the CFPB was supposed to do, which was Elizabeth Warren's pet project. And based on what you're about to hear from Tim Scott, it just seems like the Democrats are against everything that would actually protect consumers and increase the possibility of them achieving their American dream, all the while blaming it on Republicans and President Trump. Chris Dixon goes on to say that we support any legislation that achieves that progress while safeguarding the core benefits of blockchain technology, empowering peer-to-peer digital economies to operate without intermediaries. The bill isn't perfect and will require refinements to achieve these goals, but it is essential that the Senate complete its bipartisan work on the Genius Act. Moving quickly on this and a market structure bill would provide long overdue clarity for consumers and the industry so that we entrench dollar dominance and the U.S. remains the leader in blockchain technology.
I think stablecoins is, if you think about it from a guy who's 50 plus years old, stablecoins is like having a traveler's check on blockchain. And so it creates access across the world, and it also democratizes in a powerful way. So as a kid who grew up in poverty in a single parent household, I always think about how important it is to make it easier for single mothers and people struggling to reduce their costs and have greater access. And the faster we get there, the easier it is for the average American to live their version of the American dream. And so the stablecoin legislation just takes a leap in that direction.
So let's talk for just a minute about how we got here. During his first term, Donald Trump was extremely critical of crypto, describing crypto as, quote, highly volatile and based on thin air, and highlighting that it can, quote, facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity. When he ran for office in 2024, however, the crypto industry poured enormous sums of money into Donald Trump's election, and after he was elected, crypto leaders contributed another $18 million to his inauguration. It was no surprise when Trump reversed his position and began to boost the industry. But it has been shocking to see Donald Trump move at breakneck speed to use his position as president to reap billions of dollars for himself personally and for his family.
Elizabeth Warren quoting President Trump from nearly a decade ago during his first term when he described cryptocurrency as volatile and based on thin air carries significant weight, though consequential might be better framed as revealing given the context. And at the time, Trump's assessment reflected a broader skepticism. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin were indeed volatile, often unbacked by tangible assets and poorly understood. This critique resonates with some truth, as many cryptocurrencies, unlike stablecoins, lack pegs to assets like fiat currency or commodities. Herein lies the critical error that Elizabeth Warren is making, conflating all cryptocurrencies with stablecoins as if they are identical. While all stablecoins are a form of cryptocurrency, not all cryptocurrencies are stablecoins. And stablecoins designed to maintain value stability are a subset often backed by reserves like USD, the US dollar, or gold. Whereas many cryptocurrencies embrace volatility as a feature of their decentralized speculative nature. To draw a parallel, consider the early days of aviation. Back in the early 1900s, 1910s, airplanes were seen as wildly volatile, both in their unreliable mechanics and their potential for catastrophic failure. Critics dismissed them as dangerous novelties, untested and unfit for widespread use, yet with time, rigorous testing, and technological advancements, aviation transformed into a cornerstone of global transportation, far safer and more reliable than its early detractors could have imagined. Similarly, cryptocurrencies, once dismissed as speculative and unstable, have matured over the past decade. Blockchain technology has proven resilient, and while volatility persists in some assets, others, like stablecoins, have carved out stability and utility. Dismissing crypto as a monolith ignores this evolution, much like writing off aviation after its first crash. But that's not what Elizabeth Warren is really trying to do here now, is it?
The biggest corruption scandal in modern history is unfolding right now, and no one in here is paying attention to it. Trump has created the opportunity to trade presidential favors like tariff exemptions, pardons, and government appointments for crypto purchases that will directly benefit himself and his family. And no one needs to speculate on what might happen. All of this is happening in full view of the public. Over his first 100 days, the president has enabled corruption on such an unprecedented scale, it would truly make a two-bit dictator blush. Most people are aware that the meme coin Trump launched ahead of his inauguration was sagging in value recently. So his recent announcement that he would host a dinner for the top 220 investors in the coin and would provide a, quote, exclusive bonus VIP White House tour for the top 25 investors suddenly boosted Trump's crypto venture. Trump has already made more than $300 million from trading fees alone and billions more in unrealized gains since he owns 80% of those coins.
Sounds like Elizabeth Warren is just butthurt that President Trump knows how to manage his money and market a meme coin, which inherently is called a meme coin. I don't think anybody's really taking these things seriously, let alone this is all out in the open, in the public. There's no hiding it, unlike her counterpart, Nancy Pelosi, or now AOC and Jasmine Crockett.
And this is not his only crypto grift. 2 weeks after the Banking Committee voted on the Genius Act in March, President Trump's crypto company, World Liberty Financial, launched its own stablecoin called USD1. Don Jr. is promoting it as, quote, just as safe as a bank account, but with all that extra nonsense. USD1 was quietly launched less than a week ago, and its market capitalization now exceeds $2 billion. It is already the 7th largest stablecoin in the entire world. As the New York Times reported last week in a front-page story about Trump's crypto corruption, quote, World Liberty Financial has eviscerated the boundary between private enterprise and government policy in ways without precedent in modern American history. And here's the most egregious example. Trump's stablecoin was issued on the network of Binance, the largest crypto exchange in the world. Binance is an interesting choice to be Trump's partner in the stablecoin business. Back in 2023, Binance pleaded guilty to criminal charges after allowing, quote, money to flow to terrorists, cyber criminals, and child abusers through its platform. Its CEO went to jail after also pleading guilty to criminal money laundering charges. He is reportedly lobbying Trump for a pardon. What better way to buy off Donald Trump than to offer him a very favorable business deal in the stablecoin business?
Speaking of President Biden violating every norm on his way out the door, he decided to issue, literally on his way out the door, blanket pardons for Dr. Anthony Fauci, retired General Mark Milley, and members of the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Even the Associated Press says this is an extraordinary use of the powers of the presidency in his final hours. And Joe Biden said in a statement, again, his excuse for breaking the law is always that he has to do it preemptively so Donald Trump doesn't break the law. By the way, President Trump did just arrive at the White House. He was greeted by President Biden's prone body. They propped him up on some sort of stand, and then he greeted President Trump, and Jill took Joe's hand and waved it at Trump, and then they all sort of moved into the White House. Apparently, he wrote a letter that he is leaving for President Trump. It may or may not say that he's being held hostage by members of his own administration and has not decided any of his actual policies for the last several years. Meanwhile, Ivanka Trump has also arrived at the Capitol building in preparation for the inauguration, the second inauguration of her father. Anyway, Joe Biden issued a statement upon issuing these parting shots this morning, these pardons this morning. Quote, "Our nation relies on dedicated, selfless public servants every day. They are the lifeblood of our democracy. Yet alarmingly, public servants have been subjected to ongoing threats and intimidation for faithfully discharging their duties. In certain cases, some have even been threatened with criminal prosecutions, including General Mark Milley, Dr. Fauci, and the members and staff of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. These public servants have served our nation with honor and distinction and do not deserve to be targets of unjustified and politically motivated prosecutions." So, again, the idea here is that he is going to preemptively pardon all these people because otherwise Donald Trump and his mean cadre of mean people are going to do something. And that'll be so brutal. This has been Joe Biden's going excuse for everything for 4 years. If I don't violate the law, then they will violate the law.
The opportunity for corruption is not hypothetical. Trump has already given us a staggering example. Last week, it was reported that an Abu Dhabi investment firm, MGX, is using Trump's USD1 stablecoin to finance a $2 billion investment in Binance, essentially giving Trump a cut of the deal. The firm is chaired by the so-called spy sheik of the United Arab Emirates and co-owned by G42, a firm with extensive ties to the Chinese government. The Trump Organization recently announced plans to build a hotel and an apartment building in the UAE, and buyers, you guessed it, will be allowed to make payments in Bitcoins. The Genius Act makes this kind of corruption worse. There is nothing in the bill to stop it. Instead, the bill would accelerate it. President Trump and the crypto industry are not trying to jam through this bill because they know it will make corruption and bribery harder. They're trying to jam it through because they know it will turbocharge the size and scale of the stablecoin market and help boost the value of their own stablecoin ventures, all while containing no real restrictions on the president's self-dealing.
You regret saying that President Biden had a mental acuity. He had a sharpness to him. You said that up until July of last year.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you? You did not see any decline from 2024 Joe Biden to 2021 Joe Biden?
Look, he was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him.
Senator, on his feet is not praise. He can speak in sentences is not praise.
Right.
Okay.
Under the current version of the bill, President Trump is able to rake in transaction fees every time a stablecoin is used or traded, every time his stablecoin is used or traded. When trading is active, those fees are measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Trump will also make money a second way. Everyone who owns USD1 essentially provides Trump with an interest-free loan. This means that Trump will make money on assets backing the stablecoin, and he will pay no interest to the holders of the coin. Big corporations and foreign governments can run the MGX play and use USD1 to cut Trump in on business deals or openly pay him off for tariff exemptions and other special deals, pardons, or government appointments. For a giant corporation hoping to see a prosecution dropped or a license granted, Trump's new stablecoin business creates a way to offer a payoff for the President of the United States to use his influence to get the desired outcome.
I got my hands on some early Hunter Biden art. Look at that beauty. For 500 grand, it could be yours too. I mean, this is apparently, according to the White House press office, this is his new profession. Yeah, lots of new artists jump right in and get a studio in New York and get several $100,000. I may become an artist too.
It's a bargain. It's a bargain. You just might be able to buy all kinds of access to the Biden White House.
These massive opportunities for grift must be stopped, and Democrats have common sense amendments to do exactly that. For example, we propose that the president and all other elected officials and their families be barred from owning, controlling, promoting, or otherwise participating in stablecoin business ventures. While I believe that all elected officials should be barred from buying, selling, and trading stock, investments in stablecoin companies themselves create a special risk right now. Congress is currently writing laws that will sharply increase or decrease the value of these businesses. The public should know that no one is making decisions to further their own financial interests. The current version of the Genius Act contains no such restrictions. The Senate should not pass a bill that facilitates Trump's breathtaking corruption and lines his pockets and welcomes other elected officials to do the same. There are other fundamental problems with the Genius Act that need to be fixed before we vote. It is crucial to prohibit the intermingling of commercial businesses and stablecoins. For centuries, our country has maintained a separation between our system of money and payments on the one side and actual businesses in the real economy on the other side. That separation helps protect the stability of our financial system, helps promote fair competition in the economy, and prevents concentrating too much economic power in the hands of just a few. Democrats and Republicans have, time and again, linked arms to defend exactly this separation. For example, when Mark Zuckerberg tried to leverage Facebook to create a stablecoin in 2019, both Democrats and Republicans said no. Run Facebook or run a stablecoin operation, but do not mix the two together. Under the Genius Act, however, Zuckerberg could launch his own coin as soon as the bill is passed. This is particularly of interest to Elon Musk. He has already explained his plan to expand his social media platform, X, into a payment platform, X Money. He has said that he can use the reach of X so that in a few years, X Money and his stablecoin will be, quote, half the global financial system. The man has vision.
I don't know if you saw this, but Elizabeth Warren got confronted, and it's on Twitter this morning. She got confronted about the amount of money that she's received from pharmaceutical drug companies. She said she's never received any money from pharmaceutical drug companies and never received any monies from any PACs.
Hey, Massachusetts, are you good? How in the hell did you end up with 2 pharma-shills as your senators? Both of these senators have been very outspoken about RFK Jr., and we are going to do what we do best. We're going to see who's bribing, funding them, starting with Elizabeth Warren. But this is what she posted today. Say goodbye to your smile and say hello to polio. That's what's on the horizon if RFK Jr. becomes a secretary of HHS. And puts out this scripted video. And she even mentions how she's terrified of losing her fluoride from her water. But let's see if she really just cares about our health. She's received $491,000 from health professionals and $125,000 from pharmaceuticals or health products. Oh, and don't forget about the $108,000 from hospitals and nursing homes, for a grand total of $871,000 from the healthcare industry. And this is actually her cheapest election out of all of them. And by the way, I always get asked where I find my data. This is Open Secrets. They do an amazing job.
And then, of course, underneath it, Community Notes strikes again. And of course, she received millions.
Yeah.
She's a fucking liar.
Well, and it's an arms race. How can pharma cloak the money that it's giving so that there's plausible deniability at the point that Elizabeth Warren is confronted, or Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders was hilarious. Only $1.5 billion.
Senator Warren, is your acceptance of $5.2 million from Big Pharma since 2020 the reason why you don't want RFK Jr. suing Big Pharma? Is that why?
Check my website. I don't take contributions from Big Pharma executives. I don't take any corporate PAC money. And you and your allies already know that.
Thank you.
They collect their data right from the FEC website. The FEC website looks like this. This is where all the candidates have to report what they bring in and what they spend. And then Open Secrets takes this data and puts it together. So it's easy for us to digest. And as I was digging through all of this data, there's something else that caught my attention. I found this article that said that Elizabeth Warren condemned super PACs. Now she's benefiting from one. And this article talks about this Persist PAC. And at the time, they had no idea who was funding the PAC. But now we do. Carla Jerviston gave a whopping $14.6 million to support Elizabeth Warren for the Senate. This is her, and she is a physician. Not only did she attend Stanford, her father was a professor there for over 50 years. And to honor her father, she helped fund the construction of the new Stanford Medical Center. You know who else has ties to Stanford? Pfizer. Back in 2010, they gave a grant to Stanford saying that there's no strings attached. Put your hand up if you actually think that's true.
Only 1.5 million out of 200 million. Only 1.5.
Yep, that's what I saw
Christy
as well.
trying to say nothing. Only the hardworking people of this country gave me money.
Well, I don't think...
I'm sure nobody. And the grant was $3 million to back new curriculum. But wait, there's more. Pfizer funded an independent educational grant program through, surprise, Stanford. How do all of these dots connect? Well, honestly, that's kind of difficult. As I was doing research, it is very clear that a lot has been hidden here. But this article may give us a hint. Looks like Stanford professors have been found to receive money right from big pharma companies like Eli Lilly. Why does this all matter? Funny enough, I think Dr. Casey Means has already given us the answer. She went to Stanford and was top of her class. She talks about how there was never a class about nutrition, about exercise. She simply learned a diagnosis and a pill to solve it. Because the minute that we find out that we can heal ourselves with food, think about whose bottom line is going to hurt real bad. So to summarize, in addition to all of the money that Elizabeth Warren receives through the healthcare industry, she also has some funny ties to Carla here. Do you think she's actually really concerned about him bringing back polio? Or is he just going to hurt her donors' bottom line? Let me know your thoughts, of course, and make sure you're following me for more.
He and other big tech billionaires would be free to issue their own currencies to compete with the US dollar. There is absolutely no reason to allow this. Other bipartisan stablecoin bills have not permitted this. Blessing co-president Elon Musk's ambitions to overtake the US money supply is completely unnecessary to build a well-regulated and safe stablecoin regime. Democrats have an amendment to prohibit the intermingling between non-financial companies and stablecoin issuers. And we should make that change before we vote on the Genius Act here in the Senate. It is also important to strengthen the Genius Act to safeguard our national security. Stablecoins now account for more than 60% of crypto transactions, according to a recent public analysis from the blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis, making them, quote, the new kingpin of illicit crypto activity. The current version of the bill does little to prevent stablecoins from being exploited by terrorists, cartels, and criminals. In fact, compared to the version voted out of the Banking Committee, the current bill creates new loopholes to allow operators of so-called decentralized crypto exchanges and other services to continue circulating for non-compliant stablecoin issuers. Now, it is critical for service providers like crypto exchanges and custodians to maintain programs to check for illegal financial activity, and for our government to be able to sanction mixers that move millions of dollars for our adversaries. It is important also that terrorists and drug traffickers know that they cannot escape sanction enforcement by switching from dollars to stable coins. And it is critical that stablecoin issuers be required to monitor the blockchains on which stablecoins are traded. As drafted, the Genius Act does not include those safeguards. Democrats have language to fix that. We need also to ensure that the same basic consumer protections that apply when somebody pays their rent using their checking account or buys a cup of coffee with a credit card also apply to stablecoins. For example, at a bare minimum, consumers should have easy access to their money if they want to redeem their stablecoins. However, the Genius Act does not do that, leaving consumers exposed to potential delays, to process hurdles, and to junk fees. When it comes to consumer protection, the most recent version of the bill actually got worse compared to the version that was voted on in committee. The current Genius Act strips out certain protections, leaving consumers exposed to fly-by-night scammy wallet providers to hold their stable coins. And get this, all but the very largest stablecoin issuers get to evade auditing requirements, leaving consumers vulnerable to the type of financial fraud that is now rampant in the crypto ecosystem. Notably, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is not mentioned once in the bill, despite the CFPB being responsible for enforcing our nation's federal consumer financial laws. As Fed Chair Jerome Powell said in a Senate hearing shortly after DOJ attempted to shut down the CFPB, when CFPB is not on the job enforcing consumer protection laws, there is no one in the federal government to pick up the slack.
Look, the issue is that the CFPB wants to force banks and credit unions to hand over your private financial data to third-party tech firms, mostly fintech startups, without compensation. In other words, the government is demanding that private institutions provide quote-unquote free access to their infrastructure systems and customer data. Bureaucrats call it, quote, consumer empowerment, end quote. It's good words. But in reality, it's regulation-driven theft, paid for by everyday Americans. So what's the right approach? If consumers want to share their data, they should be free to do so. However, access to bank infrastructure should be granted through voluntary agreements. Imagine that. But fintech firms should negotiate and pay for like any other business in a free market. That's how innovation thrives, investment is rewarded, and consumers are truly protected. I have a good post on there that I posted on X and on Substack as well, called "The CFPB's Data Grab is Government Theft and You're Paying the Price."
No cop on the beat. And that's exactly what the supporters of the Genius Act are hoping for. No one in the federal government who has the expertise or the budget to be a real cop on the beat. The stablecoin scammers will target every person in America, and under the Genius Act, they will run almost no risk of getting caught. The current version of the Genius Act leaves consumers exposed to scams, fraud, and abuse. We can plug those holes and make sure that consumers are protected when making electronic payments, regardless of the technology that underpins the transaction. And Democrats have amendments for that. Finally, the Genius Act lacks the basic safeguards necessary to ensure that stablecoins don't blow up our entire financial system. This isn't a hypothetical risk. Circle's stablecoin dipped from $1 to 88 cents in March of 2023, 2 years ago, threatening a broader run on the crypto market. But regulators bailed out Circle's and other big corporations' deposits at Silicon Valley Bank in order to prevent a banking crash. Money market funds and the repo market, which pose similar risks as stablecoins, have been bailed out twice in less than 20 years. The threats that stablecoins pose to our economic system are real, and once again, taxpayers will be called on to bail out millionaires and billionaires, only this time it will be the millionaires and billionaires that are fronting for cryptocurrencies.
You're set to introduce a bill this week to entirely eliminate this agency. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, the CFPB has been an albatross of an agency. It's been unaccountable to Congress. It gets its funding directly from the Federal Reserve. Most people don't know that. It basically shows up with a letter asking the Federal Reserve for hundreds of millions of dollars just so it can operate. And it really is this leviathan of an agency that just goes from company to company without really any enforceability by law. They put out these letters, these memorandum to force corporate action when they don't even go through the Administrative Procedures Act and the Process Act. This is a thing created by Elizabeth Warren. They put it in Dodd-Frank during the Obama administration. It was passed on a party line vote. And before the CFPB, each federal agency dealt with consumer protections. The Democrats' idea was to put it into one agency that operates outside of Congress, really outside of even the purview of the executive branch. And so it's time for that agency to be shut down completely, brought to a close. So my bill would end the CFPB.
The bill as drafted permits stablecoin issuers to invest in riskier assets, including uninsured U.S. and foreign bank deposits and repo loans and hedge funds, and allows them to engage in risky non-stablecoin activities like private credit or derivatives trading. At the same time, the bill constrains regulators' ability to apply capital and liquidity safeguards to limit the chances of stablecoins' failures. It restricts regulators' ability to enforce the already weak requirements of the bill when a stablecoin issuer violates them, and it stacks the deck against denying stablecoin applications submitted by risky companies. In addition, regulators would have no authority to block worrisome mergers and acquisitions, even if the new stablecoin owners have a history of financial fraud or money laundering. Let's just give an example here. Sam Bankman-Fried decides he wants to buy a stablecoin company while he is still in prison. Genius Act says go right ahead. Democrats have solutions to fix these financial stability weaknesses, and we should include them in the bill now. If the Genius Act goes forward without these changes, Donald Trump will continue to line his pockets with crypto scams, while his policies continue to tank the economy for everyone else. Efforts to personally pay off government officials like the President of the United States will accelerate, and they're going to happen right out in the open. Big tech billionaires will have even greater control over our economy. Terrorism financing and sanctions evasions risks will grow. Consumers will be at greater risk of getting cheated, and another financial crash will be more likely. The problems with this bill are serious, But here's the thing, they can be solved. Democrats have offered solutions throughout this process, and it is not too late. We can find common ground on a reasonable framework to regulate the stablecoin market and to put those changes into the bill now. But we cannot bless Trump's corruption and put consumers, our financial system, and our national security at risk. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Meanwhile, as Elizabeth Warren is trying to keep her grift under wraps and protect her money laundering scheme and prevent Americans from actually having some access to greater financial access, funding, wealth, building tools to achieve the great American dream. And as she stands here at this podium, this lectern, running her mouth for God knows how long, I've kind of lost track and dozing off, about to go to bed. Elizabeth Warren here just continuously gaslighting whoever's in this room, which seems like no one, honestly. President Trump is doing good things. He's doing what he said he would do, and he's taking America back, making America great again, and in fact, helping to increase the safeties and protocols for protection that Elizabeth Warren claims he's against.
The first relates to gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research is a type of biomedical research where pathogens are adulterated, viruses are adulterated to make them more potent or to change the way that they function. Many people believe that gain-of-function research was one of the key causes of the COVID pandemic that struck us in the last decade. What this executive order does, first of all, it provides powerful new tools to enforce the ban on federal funding for gain-of-function research abroad. It also strengthens other oversight mechanisms related to that issue and creates an overarching strategy to ensure that biomedical research in general is being conducted safely and in a way that ultimately protects human health more.
It's a big deal. It could have been that we wouldn't have had the problem we had. Right?
A lot of people say that, sir.
If we had this done earlier. Thank you.
But who do you believe? Do you believe Elizabeth Warren? Do you believe me? Do you believe Trump? Do you believe the media? Or do you, well, I look forward to reading your comments and getting a better idea for how you guys view these types of events, these videos, these reactions and discussions, and the pieces to the puzzle that seem to be missing that conveniently Elizabeth Warren, with all that she has to say here, leaves out.